welcome to another episode of the Tuesday Night Grueling Truth Boxing Show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, a new interactive football app where you get to call what you think the offense or defense should do during a live NFL game and see what all other fans across the country have called also. Check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com. Hey, once again, boxing show, Tuesday night. I want to welcome in Dave Sidursky, my co-host.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
All right, and of course, as always, I'm Mike Goodpaster. I'm your host for the Tuesday Night Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Network. What's our topic tonight, Dave?
Our topic is the 10 greatest knockouts of all time.
Well, what was your criteria for the 10 greatest knockouts?
My criteria was it was pretty simple. The knockouts that just made you go, wow, what did I just see? I think historical significance plays a factor in there, and the shock value of the actual ending.
Okay. Well, mine was kind of the same thing, but, I mean, they're not really the 10 greatest knockouts I've ever seen, but they're the 10 greatest knockouts, if that makes any sense. Like Ann Wolfe and Vonda Ward, or Tim Witherspoon, Andres Eklund, you're not going to see bigger knockouts than that. But they're not in my top 10 because who the hell is Vonda Ward and who's Andres Eklund? But
yeah.
We'll let you start this one off tonight. What's your number 10, Dave?
My number 10 is Antonio Tarver versus Roy Jones 2 in May 2004. Tarver had given Roy Jones fifth several months earlier, losing a close decision. And then they set up the rematch. And then the moment came in the second round where Tarver just landed a straight left right up the pike, and down goes Jones. The ending was sudden, quick, and devastating. And Roy had only been down once in his career prior to that. And other than that disqualification loss to Montel Griffin, I don't think he had lost other than that to that point either. So definitely a shocking ending. It
is not in my top 10, but it was my number 11. It just missed my list. I love that, too, just because, Tarver talking a little crap to him before what was it? What's your excuse tonight, Roy? And then goes out and knocks him out with one punch in the second round. And, I mean, I'd been waiting for years for somebody to shut Roy Jones Jr. up, so I was pretty excited about that.
And it took a long time for it to happen.
Yeah, it did, because he was a great fighter. So I don't disagree with it being on there. It's not on mine, but like I said, it was number 11 on mine. My number 10 is Kinshasa Zaire, George Foreman, Muhammad Ali. Ali knocks him out in the 8th round. I could see this being higher even. It was a shock. Everybody thought Foreman was going to destroy Ali. Ali comes out, does the rope-a-dope, ends up knocking George Foreman out in front of, about 60,000 people. I just don't think you can not have this on there because, number one, it's a shocking knockout. It looked like Foreman could have beat the count but didn't. Don't think he was used to being knocked down like that. I mean, coming into the fight, he was 40-0 with 37 knockouts. He was 25 years old. Ali was 32. I don't think too many people saw this coming. So my number 10 is Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman. What do you think, Dave?
I did not have that on my list, but I definitely can see the argument for. It's definitely, we already did a show on the top 10 upsets of all time. It definitely belongs there. It didn't stick out in my mind as one of the 10 most spectacular knockouts I've ever seen.
No, you didn't say spectacular. You said the greatest knockouts.
The wow factor implies spectacular. I did say the wow factor.
Well, that was a wow factor, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a great knockout. I don't agree. I don't disagree with you there. It just missed my list.
All righty. Well, we'll go to my number 9 next, since you just trashed my number 10. My number 9 is Sugar Ray Robinson versus Gene Fulmer, their second fight. Fulmer beat in a 15-round unanimous decision. The rematch was held 4 months later. Robinson won it in the 5th round with a left hook heard round the world. I I think that it was a huge punch. It was a perfect left hook by Robinson. Robinson, one of the greatest fighters of all time. Fulmer was not a guy to get knocked out in one with just one punch. So my number 9 is Sugar Ray Robinson, Gene Fulmer number 2.
Okay, I don't have that on my list either, and that was, candidly, that was one I didn't even think about. But I do have a Ray Robinson fight on my list.
Okay. What's your number? Where are you at? Number 8?
Number 9.
Number 9.
My number 9 is Sergio Martinez versus Paul Williams 2, November of 2010. You have on one hand a guy who's really not known as a big puncher in Sergio Martinez. On the other hand, Paul Williams, who has a reputation of having a pretty solid chin. They had engaged in a very close competitive contest 11 months earlier in December of 2009. So nobody could have predicted what came next. Martinez just landed one sensational left and sent Paul Williams down like a sack of potatoes, and that was it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, at the time I was cheering for Paul, but since he stood us up on the show, I'm glad he got knocked out. Actually, I did like 4 or 5 of these top 10 lists today. It was on there probably more than it wasn't. Did make my list, but I can see it. Great punch by Sergio Martinez, who I think is a very underrated middleweight champion. Didn't really get his butt whooped till he was past his prime by Miguel Cotto. I don't think there's any way Miguel Cotto beats him 3 or 4 years earlier. I think he'd been too big, strong, and fast. Great boxer. Like I said, I think he's really underrated. So don't completely disagree with you on that one either, the way you disagreed with me on mine. But what's your number 8?
My number 8, one of my favorite fighters, Tommy Hearns over Pepino Cuevas in August of 1980. So this was the coming out party for the Hitman. Cuevas was regarded as a destroyer in his own right. 25 KOs in his 27 victories. Sugar Ray Leonard's people avoided him. 12 defenses, 11 by knockout. I believe he is the only other guy other than George Foreman to actually break the speed bag at Gleason's gym. But this was a mismatch from the beginning. Tommy's jab right and blistering hand speed had Pepino in the unusual position of just going into full retreat in the very first round. Then in the second, Tommy lands 2 vicious rights. The first sent Cuevas' body into contortions. The second left him face first on the canvas. He beat the count, but mercifully, the referee stopped the fight. Spectacular performance by Hearns.
Well, you didn't think of Robinson Fulmer. I didn't think of Hearns Cuevas. So
Fair enough.
But I can't see it. Cuevas was a really good fighter. Hearns was just too big and too long. And, I mean, he was one of the greatest punchers pound for pound in boxing history. I don't think there's too much debate with that. But
no.
My number 8, which you probably got higher, it was Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson. More of accumulation knockout, I think. But still, you definitely had the wow factor there for 42-1 underdog. Douglas was never really highly ranked. I think the highest he got was number 7. When he fought guys like Tony Tucker, he actually quit in the fight. So I don't think anybody saw him coming to Tokyo and actually beating Mike Tyson, who at the time was considered untouchable, 37-0. Douglas was 29-4-1 and had a couple fights where he'd quit on it. Like I said, accumulation. Douglas boxed his ears off that night. Tyson took a hell of a whooping, and I mean Tyson had a big chin. I don't think, even though I think Tyson is an overrated fighter, I'll never question his chin because I mean nobody really took him out with one shot. It was usually an accumulation of punches. Even Lennox Lewis later on in his career. So my number 8, with the wow factor, would be Buster Douglas over Mike Tyson.
There was actually another one that I did not have on my list, but it is my top boxing upset of all time.
Well, this is great because so far we're covering like all 20 fights that I had that I wanted to put on the list.
Good.
So it works out pretty good.
Good.
We'll go ahead to my number 7, which is George Foreman knocking out Michael Moore. Definitely a wow factor there. He had, 45 years old?
Yes.
Fighting against the end of his prime champion. I think a lot of people forget Michael Moore was 35-0 at the time, and basically probably won 7 or 8 out of the first 9 rounds. I think he did get wore down just by, Foreman had that thudding power and basically just beat on his arms and stuff all night, and then caught him a few times. I think he had him hurt a round or two earlier a little bit, and then ends up knocking him out in the 10th round. So my number 7 is George Foreman, Michael Moore.
That one actually is on my list, and I have that a bit higher.
Well, we'll let you talk about it when you get to it then.
Fair enough. My number 7, Sugar Ray Robinson versus Rocky Graziano, April 1952. Rocky Graziano was a former middleweight champion, so one had to think this would be at least somewhat competitive, but it really wasn't. Robinson was flat-footed and traded punches with Graziano, and one final right nearly tore his head off in the 3rd round and put Graziano to sleep.
I still think Fulmer was the better punch.
You might be right. I think the one thing that we can't argue about, though, is that Sugar Ray Robinson, man, he was a devastating puncher. In addition to
he was a devastating everything.
Exactly. Guy had all the tools and just blistering speed when you watch him on film, even at a middleweight, which was not his best weight.
He was great at any weight. That's why most people rank him the number 1 fighter pound for pound of all time.
Including myself.
Including yourself.
Including myself.
So where are we at? You're number 6?
Yep, we're up to number 6. My number 6 is Rocky Marciano versus Jersey Joe Walcott, September 1952. Great fight. Walcott had the better of it over the first 12 rounds, and Rocky was behind on points. However, in the 13th, Marciano lands the equalizer, a devastating right that left Walcott slumped on the ropes in the 13th, and just dead to the water after that. And Rocky goes on to be the world champion and considered to be one of the most devastating power punchers in boxing history. And also, he scored a pretty spectacular knockout in Marciano Walcott too. That time in the 1st round, and that could have been on this list.
That one wasn't as dramatic, though.
No, because because he's behind on points in the 1st one, and a guy coming from behind to knock out the heavyweight champion, it's greater theater.
Yeah. My number 6, which you probably don't have on your list, would be Jerry Cooney and Ken Norton. Because, number 1, it was a huge fight at the time. Madison Square Garden was packed. You had Cooney, who was 24-0 with 20 knockouts, fighting the former champion Ken Norton, who was 42-6, coming down the home stretch of his Hall of Fame career, pushing for one last run at a title that would have to go through the number 1 ranked Cooney to get there. And I think it was 50-some seconds, and it was one of the most devastating knockouts I've ever seen. I mean, Cooney, no matter what you say about him, was a big, strong guy that could punch. And when he hit Norton and had him sitting in that corner, I mean, if that referee lets they go one or two more punches, he probably kills him. But this is one that may not be historical, may not be a wow factor in the fact that most people predicted Cooney would beat Norton. But devastating-wise, I don't think you get much more devastating than what Jerry Cooney did to Ken Norton that night.
That was not on my list, but it was close. It was one of the final few that I considered. Definitely at 54 seconds, devastating performance. Jerry Cooney, devastating left hook. The one reason I left it off was Norton was pretty shot at that point. Ernie Shavers had starched him a couple of years earlier, and he was, I don't know what he was listed at that point of his career, 37, 38 years old, probably going on 42.
He was 35.
30, was he really?
Yeah, he was 35, and actually, did he beat Tex Cobb in that fight?
I believe he did. He did.
So, I mean, the fight before that, he beat Tex Cobb, and the fight before that, he beats the immortal Scott Ledoux.
The immortal Scott Ledoux. Let's not forget him.
But, there was still two guys that were bottom of the top 10 or close to the top 10. So I don't think that people realize how shot Norton was. And maybe he wasn't that shot. Maybe he just got caught. Because the thing is this. Big punchers, whether it be George Foreman, Ernie Shavers, Jerry Cooney, all took him out quick and devastating.
Yeah. Yeah, for whatever. It's strange that he did so well against somebody like Muhammad Ali and also against Larry Holmes, but against the sluggers, he was just completely overmatched.
Well, a lot of that's just styles, too, and just the size is so much there.
Exactly.
All right, so we are through our top 6. Before we get to the top 5, let's take a word from one of our sponsors, DraftKings.
Your season-long fantasy football lineup is locked in and ready for action, but you don't have to wait till Week 16 to get paid. Put your fantasy skills to the test starting Sunday at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site where you could kick the season off by winning $2 million. It's the biggest fantasy football contest ever. $10 million in prizes are up for grabs, including $2 million for first place and $1 million for second. One-week fantasy means no season-long commitments. It's fantasy football on demand. Play where you want, when you want, with the players you want. Then turn your love of football into a life-changing payday. Just pick up your players, pile up the points, and pick up the cash. That's it. You've never experienced football like this. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code SPREAKER to play for free for a shot at $2 million in the Week 1 Millionaire Maker. Enter SPREAKER for free entry now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
All right, guys, we're back with myself, Mike Goodpaster, and Dave Sidursky on the Tuesday night Grueling Truth Boxing Show, talking about the 10 greatest knockouts in boxing history. So, Dave, are you up or am I up with number 5?
I can go first if you want.
Go ahead.
All right, my number 5 is Hasim Rahman versus Lennox Lewis, April of 2011. I watched that fight live and had no idea who Rahman was at that point.
Didn't you ever watch the USA Tuesday Night Fights? He was on there a bunch.
I did watch some of them. His name just wasn't, the night that we watched the fight, his name didn't ring a bell to me. You had him, a relative unknown, and you had a Lennox Lewis who had spent years establishing himself as the best heavyweight in the world after he got starched by Oliver McCall. So nobody really expected what happened next. He just landed that right, and Lewis went down like a shot. And it proves that, one punch can change everything in the heavyweight division. I believe it was on my top 10 upsets in heavyweight history as well. And I watched the video today, and it was spectacular.
All right, my number 5 is Manny Pacquiao versus Juan Manuel Marquez, number 4, the 6-round knockout Marquez had. I think it definitely had the wow factor because I think, Pacquiao was winning the fight up to that point. And then all of a sudden, wow, he got a knockout. But it was their 4th fight. First 3 fights were all classic fights. All of them were disputable decisions. Could have went to either fighter. Pacquiao was on a roll where he hadn't lost in a long time, other than Tim Bradley. But, he didn't really lose that. But Marquez defeated him with 1 second remaining in the 6th round, hit him so hard it looked like he killed him. It was named the Fight of the Year and Knockout of the Year by Ring Magazine. Round 5 garnered Round of the Year honors. So I'm sure you got this one to talk about later or now at some point on your list, correct?
Your number 5 is my number 4.
Wow,
Marquez Pacquiao 4. These 3 guys had gone the distance in 3 spirited matchups, which were very close and very evenly contested. So no one would be able to predict the outcome on this one. Manny, I believe, actually had the better of the fight for the first.
Yeah, he was winning the fight, I think.
He was winning the fight. Both guys were down, and then, boom, Pacquiao's coming in, and Marquez just lands that vicious right that catches him perfectly, and Manny just keels over face first, and he's out cold. It did look like he almost killed him. And it was also the first fight, as you said, Manny was on a tremendous winning streak, including that bogus, he lost that decision to Bradley, but that was completely bogus. But this was the first fight that really established the definitive separation between him and Floyd Mayweather as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, because they had been viewed almost as equals to that point, and now Mayweather was clearly the superior guy, which would, Mayweather would go on to prove this past May.
All right, so we're to your number 4, or did you do your number 5?
Marquez Pacquiao is my number 4, so...
Okay, so you need my number 4.
I need your number 4, yes.
All right. Well, you will get my number 4 then. But my number 4 is Joe Frazier versus George Foreman. He had the goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. People forget that Frazier was a big favorite coming into the fight. He beat Muhammad Ali. Everybody kind of thought he was Superman. They come into the fight. They're both undefeated. I think Frazier was 29-0. Foreman was actually 37-0, knocking everybody out. The fight lasted less than 2 rounds, and it was kind of like the Cooney-Norton thing where the other guy's so dang big. You're looking at 6'4", 220 pounds, Foreman against 5'11", 214 pounds, Frazier. I think the wow factor there is the fact that nobody really gave Foreman much of a chance, even though he was so much bigger than Frazier. He was considered kind of green. Frazier was considered, a great heavyweight champion, which he was. So, what was it, 6 or 7 knockdowns totaled in 2 rounds. So that's my number 4 is George Foreman, Joe Frazier.
Your number 4 is my number 3, and I watched the video of this an hour ago. Which was great, other than listening to Howard Cosell's commentary. As you said, Frazier he's undefeated. He's just over a year removed from his historic victory over Ali. He's the favorite in this fight, and to this point, he's demonstrated an iron chin. But he just, he gets dropped by that wicked right uppercut of Foreman, and he unravels from there. And next thing you know, we get towards the last 20 seconds of the round, he's down 2 more times. To his credit, he keeps getting up, but he was completely, his legs were completely gone. And then you have 3 more knockdowns in the second, and, to Frazier's credit, he keeps getting up. And it almost looks like Arthur McCanty, the referee, is going to allow the fight to continue. But fortunately, he decides otherwise and mercifully stops the fight.
All right, so we are at my number 3, correct?
Correct.
All right, my number 3 is Tommy the Hitman Hearns knocking out Roberto Duran in 2 rounds in Las Vegas. I believe that was 1984, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay. The big thing here is, number 1, it was a devastating knockout. But number 2, it was after one of Duran's greatest victories where he beats Davey Moore at Madison Square Garden. A lot of people thought he could come in and just swarm Hearns, stay on him, and beat him. But he just wasn't big enough. He got held off, got knocked out. And the thing is this, I don't think there was anybody else, unless maybe it was later in his career with a William Joppy or something. Not too many people were knocking Roberto Duran out. And the fact that Tommy the Hitman Hearns did it with one punch, I think makes this fight that it has to be in everybody's top 5. Would you agree?
I would agree, and I have that one higher on my list.
I know. You told me about that earlier, so that's why I didn't want to talk too much about it. I could save you some on it. Let's see. What's your number 2 then, right?
My number 2 is also on your list. George Foreman versus Michael Moorer. George was, 72 years old?
14, I think. That's in like grill years, though.
Yeah. Moorer, an undefeated heavyweight champion. Moorer dominates the fight from the outset. By the 10th round, George is badly swollen under the left eye. But Big George proved the last thing to go in a fighter is their big punch. He landed just that quick, crushing right that sent Moorer crashing down to the canvas, not to get up, and Big George becomes the heavyweight champion of the world at age 45, more than 20 years after he lost the title. A pretty amazing historical accomplishment, and one of the most shocking moments in recent boxing history, in my view.
All right. Well, I'm not going to disagree with it, so it's on my list. So my number 2 would be Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling. Number 1, you had probably the most historical fight in boxing history. You know, you had the African American against the German. You had the United States against Nazi Germany. You had the fact that Max Schmeling had pulled a huge upset in the first fight by outboxing Joe Louis and knocking him out in the 11th round. There's a case to be made that fight could be in the top 10. It was so big. The second fight, Louis actually gets the title shot because of people thinking that, you know, Schmeling's a Nazi. So James J. Braddock gives Louis the shot, plus the fact that Louis gave him a percentage of his purses the rest of his life there. Louis Schmeling, I think, if you look at the list of people that were in attendance at that fight, Clark Gable, Douglas Fairbanks, Gary Cooper, Gregory Peck, J. Edgar Hoover, I mean, pretty much everybody that was anybody was at the fight, and the knockout was vicious. I mean, he hits him, and I remember from watching the fight where he nails him, I think, with a big left hook. Schmeling's draped over the ropes with one arm, and Louis is standing there just wailing on him, hitting him with left hook after left hook in the chest and the head until the referee finally stops it. So my number 2 is Joe Louis versus Max Schmeling.
I actually, when I first started my list, I was convinced that one was going to be on it. I ended up leaving it off, but I can definitely see the argument for. Certainly, perhaps the most historically significant fight and significant knockout in boxing history. I guess in the end, my thought process was this, if you really think about it, was this really a true surprise? Joe Louis had 2 years to refine his craft, improve his skills, and get better. Well, Schmeling was continuing to age. And in that first fight, Max Schmeling had caught lightning in a bottle. But was he really going to duplicate that the second time around? So, after weighing and evaluating it, I left it off. But it would probably be my number 11.
Boo. Well, I would say there's a wow factor there just because of the circumstances. Definitely historical, and it was a brutal knockout. I mean, I believe that he put Schmeling in the hospital for a while with that one also. But since you got it at number 11, I won't argue with you.
Fair enough.
Real quick, we got to take a word from our final sponsor, Gridiron Mo. We'll be back with the number 1 on the Grueling Truth Boxing Show right after this.
This is former All-Pro Leon Searcy. I've got a new interactive app called Gridiron Mode, where you get to call the plays, offense or defense, and a live NFL game. You get to interact with other fans, pick the play, pick the call. That's Gridiron Mode.
And we're back on the Grilling Truth Boxing Show. We are to number 1, and we're going to let Dave Sidersky start it off.
Okay, my number 1, I believe, was your number 3. Tommy Hearns over Roberto Duran in June of 1984. Probably the most shocking thing I've ever seen in the ring. You have Tommy Hearns coming in. He's still a really good fighter, but he's only scored 2 stoppages in his previous 6 fights. He's become known more as a boxer than the hitman who starts 30 of his first 32 opponents. On the other hand, you have a Roberto Duran who is, we're talking Roberto Duran here. He's never been stopped, only off his feet twice in 80-plus bouts. 7 months earlier, he goes the distance with Marvelous Marvin Hagler, loses, but, certainly gives him a spirited battle. And next thing you know, Tommy Hearns is turning him into a chew toy. Hearns was just too quick, too tall, too big, and too powerful. By the end of the first, Duran is in full retreat, and then he's down twice in the first round, And then in the second, 1 minute into the round, Tommy lands just that crushing right, and you see just, Duran bounce off the ropes and just topple over face first, motionless. It was just a shocking outcome simply because this was Roberto Duran. Nobody did this to Duran. Nobody did it to him before, and until William Joppy, when Duran was almost 50 years old, nobody did it to him after either.
Yep, I've got no debate with that since I had it at number 3. My number 1 was the greatest one-punch knockout in boxing history. I think you brought it up earlier, but I'm not sure. Rocky Marciano and Jersey Joe Walcott. Fought at Philadelphia Municipal Stadium. Marciano comes in undefeated. Walcott's 37 years old, but he was probably better at 37 than he was at 27. I think Marciano trailed by 2, 3, and 4 rounds going into the 13th round, so he needed a knockout to win the fight. About a half minute into the round, Marciano bullied Walcott into a corner. Walcott feinted with the left hand and followed with the right, which was one of his signature moves. Marciano doesn't flinch, plows his right hand into Walcott's undefended face before he could deliver the goods, snapping his head back in one of the greatest one-punch knockouts in boxing history. Walcott was relieved of his consciousness immediately, falling limp to the ground. As he descended, I remember watching his arm caught one of the ring ropes, keeping his knee just above the canvas, and you could see Marciano getting ready to hit him with an uppercut, and actually pulls off from doing it right at the last second. They count to 10. That was it. In the dressing room, I know I read in Ring Magazine where they interviewed the former champion. He tried to recall what had happened, and what Walcott said was, I don't remember anything. I don't know if it was a right or a left. I wasn't tired. I felt good. I was setting my own pace. Then, bang, it hit me. I still don't know what it hit me. I couldn't even try to get up. So to me, it's historically significant because it's Rocky Marciano. It's a shocking one-punch knockout. So to me, Marciano Walcott was my number 1. I think you had it in here too, didn't you?
I did. I had it at number 6, and it definitely had the wow factor. And the amazing thing about Rocky Marciano was 185, 188 pounds.
Yeah.
And carried that kind of dynamite in his fists.
Well, and I think he was an underrated fighter defensively a little bit. And when you watch that fight, most guys that fought Walcott fell for that feint. He didn't. He looked like he was waiting on it so he could deliver his punch. And I'll tell you another one-punch knockout that really stood out to me. Didn't make my top 10 because historically significant it probably wasn't. But that would be Mike Weaver knocking out John Tate in the 15th round in Knoxville, Tennessee, in, 1979 or 80?
Yes, I think it was 80. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that he'd lost all but maybe 1 or 2 rounds. There's 45 seconds left. He hits him with the big shot. Tate drops right on his face, and that pretty much ended Tate's career and catapulted Weaver somewhat to some kind of stardom where people knew who he was for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I thought of that one too. I thought of Jack Dempsey versus Jess Willard, probably the most horrific beating I've ever seen on tape.
Well, what about Dempsey Firpo?
Dempsey Firpo too. That was a wild fight.
Because I remember that Mickey, if you remember the late champion Rocky Balboa, his trainer, always said that was one of the greatest fights he ever saw.
It was definitely a wild fight. And
just ignore that I acted like Rocky was real. All right, that's
fine. Shavers Norton, that was a good one.
Yeah, Shavers Ellis was a big knockout.
Shavers Ellis.
Did you happen to get the pay-per-view Saturday night?
I passed on the pay-per-view.
Have you had a chance to see the fight anywhere?
Not yet. I'm assuming it'll be on Showtime this weekend.
Yeah, I can tell you this. I bought it, but it was basically for the undercard. And the undercard made it so it was one of the few fights that I've paid for in the last 5 or 6 years that it was worth buying just because of the undercard. I mean, it was a great undercard. All 3 fights under it were great fights. Berto and Mayweather was what you figure Berto and Mayweather is going to be. I did think Berto won a round, though. So what the hell?
That's an accomplishment.
I'm sorry, Dave. I sit there all day, and I think, I'm not going to buy this $65 bucks for Berto and Mayweather. And then they show who to pay or who was on the undercard. And see, there is always something that makes me buy every fight no matter what. I don't know what it is.
I hear you. It's kind of like going to the strip club and saying,
I've never
okay,
been to a strip club. I haven't. Well, but we know you have now. What's it like going to a strip club?
I hear this from my friends. That okay,
Dave, what's it like going to a strip club? You obviously have been there. You wouldn't equate it to that.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend this money, but then you do.
So how much is it in Massachusetts for a lap dance? $20 for a lap dance. Got some high quality broads there, huh? I live in a place called Lawrenceburg, Indiana, where, and this is no lie, there is a strip club that sits right across the street from the high school and right next to the elementary school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I would never go because I'm sorry, I just don't want to pay money to look at it and not get nothing out of it, you know? I mean, I'm already married. It's kind of the same damn thing. But,
yeah.
But really, in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, there is a strip club that sits between the high school and the elementary school. They said something about it can't be moved because it was grandfathered in back in the 40s or the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, come on. We got a strip club right across the street from. I mean, so what could go wrong there? I mean, you're getting a high-quality education there.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. So it's right across the street from the new football field that costs $750,000 for a turf field for a football team that can barely win a game. But that's Lawrenceburg, Indiana for you. So,
yeah.
What the hell? So you can come to Lawrenceburg, and, you've got the high school, the strip club, the elementary school by it, and down at the end of the road is the casino.
Interesting neighborhood.
That's Americana right there, right? You got a casino, a strip club, and a couple schools. What the hell? You'll have to come to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and I've never been to a strip club, and I really haven't, because I always thought it was kind of stupid. Plus, I figured everybody in there was probably kind of creepy with hoodies on, trying to see so nobody could see them. But there's like a convenience store run by a bunch of Indian people. The ones from India, not Native Americans, because most of them got killed off by our government a long time ago. But, the ones from India who talk funny and don't have to pay taxes, but it doesn't upset me. I could care less. But I used to actually work at a high school like 15 years ago, and the women that would go to the convenience store about the same time I would, be 2 or 3 in the morning, if you're paying any amount of money to see them naked, you really have issues. I mean, some of them didn't have more than 2 teeth.
Oh, boy. I think I'll pass on that.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like some New England Patriots cheerleaders. I'm kidding.
Yeah. It's like,
that'd be Pittsburgh Steelers cheerleaders. I'm sorry.
Yeah. After 2/5 of Jack Daniels, maybe.
Really? Okay.
Even then, I'm not sure.
You know what? I've never been so drunk that I would stick my you-know-what in something that was that disgusting. And I find it really hard to believe anybody can get that drunk. I think what it is, you know, like there'll be a 500-pound woman with no teeth there, and you've had a few to drink, and you figure, oh, what the hell? I'll just tell all my buddies if they find out I was really drunk. And I'll act like they understand, and they'll act like they understand because they've been through the same thing where they just said, the hell with it, I'm going to do it and tell everybody I was drunk.
I can't say that I've ever been that drunk either.
Well, I would say that you probably have because you already tried to use it as an excuse that you might if you had, what was it, 2/5 of Jack Daniels or something?
Yeah, if I had 2/5 of Jack Daniels, I'd be dead.
I don't know. I don't like liquor. I can drink beer, but I don't like liquor.
Yeah. I stick with beer myself. So,
yeah, I mean, you know, you end up having sex with less fat, disgusting women, I guess. But now there's probably a lot of fat women that are mad. Come on, fat women ain't listening to a boxing show this late at night anyways. They're watching the DVR of their old Oprah episodes and eating some more food probably. But we better get off this show before they lock us up. So,
really?
Hey, if you're listening to us, I'm Dave Sidursky. Now, if you're listening to us, I'm Mike Goodpaster. I'm the host of The Grueling Truth with Dave Sidursky. You can catch us every Tuesday night on The Grueling Truth Boxing Show. Also, I talked to Peter McNeely, who was a guest earlier in the year. When it gets the week of Tyson Fury against Vladimir Klitschko, he's going to come on and preview the fight with us also.
Oh, great.
So we'll have Peter on.
Peter
is that's funny. But
Peter's a fellow Massachusetts guy.
Yeah, hell, we'll have 2 of you guys on.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
At least you know some of the women will be safe that night. I mean, from you, Dave. I know how you are now. I think Peter's getting married, so this is all on you now.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, don't forget. Go
ahead. For their minds and scintillating conversation.
Hey, guys, don't forget to check us out at www.thegruelingtruth.com. Check out our sponsor, Gridiron Mo, at www.gridironmo. Check out Dave on Twitter at
Dave Sidursky at DCS5099.
And you can follow me at RiverMonster11. Make sure you check out the Grueling Truth Facebook page. So I guess we got another boxing showdown. Do you have any words of wisdom at the end of the show, Dave?
Great show again, always, Mike, and appreciate all of the listeners, and I am truly in favor for equal rights for all women.
Okay. I don't know where the hell that came from, but yet you'll go to a strip club where they degrade women. That's all right. At least try. And remember, everybody, if you want to make your next trip memorable, come to Lawrenceburg, Indiana, where you get a strip club that sits between an elementary school and a high school. But make sure you listen to Grueling Truth later on in the week. Tomorrow morning, we will have the NFL Pick'em Show with myself, Leon Searcy, Matt Andrews Scavage, and we'll have a special guest picker. Our guest picker last week, Dave Sidursky, went 11-5, which beat Leon Searcy. So there you go.
Yes.
But you lost to Matt. You tied me. But so you get $1 million though if you're the best guest picker all year. So you get a shot with 11 wins. Matt's giving out the $1 million too. So you have to talk to him about it if you win.
Matt's got the purse strings.
Yeah. But, well, we got to wrap this up, I guess, before they arrest us. So, but for Dave Sidursky, this is Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.